Welcome to the Epic Vishin Podcast, a space where we shine a light on artists and creatives who don't always get the spotlight. I'm your host, Jojo, and today we are asking a big question. Why does creativity thrive outside the city centre? When people think about art in Greater Manchester, the mind goes straight to the city centre. The big galleries, the institutions, the bright lights. But what if I told you that some of the most exciting creativity is happening outside of those walls, right here in places like Tameside, the places most people overlook? Yes, Manchester City Centre has incredible spaces, but there's this myth that real art only happens there. And that's not just wrong, it's harmful. It ignores the artists grinding day and night in smaller towns. It ignores the culture bubbling quietly yet powerfully outside the city spotlight. You know, when I first came to the UK just over 3 years ago, I did what most artists would do. I wanted to check out the art scene, so I said, okay. I took the bus into Manchester City Centre and I stopped at Piccadilly Gardens, and wow, my senses were overwhelmed. You know, the sights, the smells, oh my goodness, some legal, some not so legal.
You know. Stop asking.
I even had a list of galleries that I intended to visit. So, moved from one gallery to the next and asked so many questions. And they did what they always do. Here's our card, email us some pictures of your work, and if we'll show it to the owners. If they like it, they'll get in touch. But if you're an artist, you know how that story goes, right?
75 years later.
They never get in touch. So yeah, at this point I was living in Bredbury, trying to break into the UK art scene, and then life hit me hard. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, all of it. At the same time, my second child was being born. It was one of the darkest periods in my life. Even then, I kept pushing. I went for a job interview just 2 days after my surgery, got the job, started working part-time to support my family and keep myself going mentally. Later, we moved to Denton, where I found work as an arts facilitator. Started working with children and adults with complex needs, delivering art workshops. That was really the turning point because it felt meaningful. Then I applied for an artist grant. It was just £100, but it meant the world to me. I used it to create a 2D animated short film called The Spider God. And then I applied to film festivals and I actually got screened at a few. That little push of belief made all the difference. The person who reviewed my application and awarded me that grant was Hannah Alwan Weston of the Arts Council. She also organized an artist social somewhere in Tameside, so I decided to show up in person and thank her. When I got there, it was this pub that was attached to an old mill that's been converted into artist studios. Oh, it was a really cool place. And the vibe was incredible. That night I met Hannah and I met other local artists, and the frustration was loud and clear. Everything was too Manchester focused. Tameside was invisible. And then someone said something that stuck with me. Why don't we create our own buzz instead of always chasing the city? Even a curator from Castlefield Gallery who was in attendance that night agreed. That moment confirmed something that I had already been feeling. That creativity doesn't only beat in the city centre. It beats just as strongly, or maybe even stronger, in places like Tameside. And that's what I've seen ever since. Creativity here feels alive. Graffiti on Ashton walls, musicians in community centres, painters exhibiting in cafes. These are not people chasing prestige. They are creating because they have to, because it's who they are. And that grassroots energy, that's the soul of art. That's what keeps it authentic. Think about it. So many movements, graffiti, punk, hip-hop, grime, they They weren't born in polished galleries. They were born in the overlooked neighborhoods, youth clubs, on the streets. Why? Because when the mainstream ignores you, you make your own lane. Of course, it's not all romantic. Artists outside the city center face real challenges. No visibility, no funding, no big opportunities. That's why I'm building this podcast. To build a platform to amplify those voices and to show the world that creativity is everywhere, not just in the places with the biggest spotlight. So here's my message for today. Creativity doesn't need skyscrapers or shiny galleries. Sometimes the most powerful art could be found on the backstreet wall, community hall, or right here in Tameside. Thanks for listening to the Epic Vishin Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend and let's grow this movement together. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. What's the most unexpected place you've seen art come alive? Drop me a message and I might share it in a future episode.